If you're new to woodworking and are looking to buy a used hand plane or just want to build up your collection, well, we're going to tell you what to look for before you buy. Hello folks, my name is Stanton, and before we get going on today's video, I do want to thank Woodcraft for sponsoring today's episode. Woodcraft's goal is helping you make wood work. Now, I gotta say, as a professional furniture maker, I use the Woodcraft Wood River number 4.5 hand plane. Now, this is a really nice hand plane, but it does require an investment of some money to purchase it. And if you're just starting off in woodworking, you may not want to drop that much money. So I would suggest on getting a good used hand plane. So as you can see, I have a rather large collection of hand planes. I have over 200 altogether. So I do think I know a little bit on this subject. However, I'm going to ask my good friend and mentor, Laney, to join us. Dennis has over 60 years experience as a furniture maker. He also is a hand tool enthusiast. So I think he has a little bit of knowledge on this topic. Now, this video is mostly just going to focus on Stanley metal body hand planes. So, with that being said, let's get into our first discussion on what to look for. So Dennis, how about you walk us through the first part? Tell us what it is that you would do in looking at purchasing a hand plane.
The purpose, most guys are looking for Stanley style planes. And they can range, they can be, you know, a full cast iron plane. They can be a transitional plane.
Which is part metal, merged with the wood. This
right.
came...
the theory being that, you know, these were going to be somewhat lighter. They'd take a little more abuse. They weren't so subject to breakage. When we talk about breakage, we generally talk about cast iron planes. As you can see, this has got a couple of breaks on it here.
Now, does that affect this? I mean, is that something I should be concerned about if I'm going to be wanting to buy this hand plane?
No, I don't think so. I would look and see, again, for any fractures. And a lot of people think that because this is a metal plane, if it drops, it will bend. Well, this is cast iron, and it does not bend very well. It'll bend a little bit.
Just like that there.
But typically cast iron fractures, and that's why this damage that you have here to the cheek of the plane and on the tail of the plane, you can see these probably are drops.
Now, I've seen some before that they've probably been dropped and they cracked and they put a weld on it. Would that still be usable?
If there is a welded or a brazed repair, that could indeed change the flatness of the plane.
Gotcha.
Okay? That would be the only time that I would really be concerned about that. And the other thing is, when you see that there's a welded repair or a brazed repair, you want to look at all the areas, especially around the mouth, to see if those fracture lines go through and haven't been addressed.
Okay.
Okay. But again, this is a perfectly good user plane. So the first thing you want to do is make sure that everything, all the different parts are appropriate. Many times you'll see planes that have been put together by a composite of parts, and they will kind of fit, but if they don't fit exactly, because these are all machined to be very precise, if they don't fit exactly, you'll have a great deal of difficulty getting the performance you want out of the plane.
Okay.
So look at all the parts, i.e. this is a low knob plane. The way this frog sits in here is machined on a very specific way. So you want to make sure that everything goes together properly. The next thing is to take a look at the iron. Irons, more often than not, are only heat treated so far up. Once you get past the area that it's heat treated, you can't sharpen it anymore because it's just basically soft metal. The other thing you want to do is make sure that everything is appropriate. Again, the irons are appropriate. There are a lot of aftermarket irons that will actually improve the performance of the plane. Many times guys will take and use the wrong iron in a plane. Before I forget about it, this is a corrugated sole, and you'll see an awful lot of Stanley planes with corrugated soles. I have a lot of them. They're much more common than a flat sole. The one thing you want to be careful of when using these, you can get a lot of little nicks and dings in them, so you want to make sure that those are smooth, and you can clean them up with a file.
And what was the purpose of this?
The theory behind this is that when you're planing, especially something that's real dense, like a cherry, that it relieves friction. So it's not a bad idea, but the problem is, especially on smoothing planes, is that if you get a little bit of a clog of chips, you get wax, any kind of dirt buildup in these corrugations, they'll leave a little mark on your finished product.
So for the most part, looking at this one as an example, you would say it's complete, and as a working hand plane, not a collecting one, this will do the job.
Oh yeah, it appears to be fine. You're getting pretty close down here to the end. You're going to have to replace that iron before too long, but it's certainly workable. The other thing is the lever cap. There are some differences in the lever caps from series to series, and you want to make sure that you have a lever cap that's appropriate for two reasons. Number one, if you're looking at it from a collector's point of view, you want them to be complete. But sometimes lever caps from one series will not fit another series. They won't secure correctly. Sometimes they're longer from where they anchor onto the iron and they sit back on the hold down screw. So sometimes they appear to fit, but if they don't fit, they can many times affect the performance of the plane.
So like it could chatter and leave marks on and not give you shavings.
Exactly.
All right, so that's Stanley number 5. Here's a Stanley number 7. What do you think about this one?
Okay, well, this you've got a good find here for a user. I mean, this is it doesn't look that great. It's got some light surface rusting on it, and going back to rusting, I don't get real concerned about rust, even pitted rust. My theory is that if there's a little bit of pitting on the sole, it's actually going to serve a purpose of relieving friction, just like the corrugations do.
Now, what about if you got rust on the iron, the blade? Is that a concern?
No, as long as it's not pitted to the point that you can't sharpen, or hone the iron. But some surface pitting on it, that doesn't really bother, especially for a user. What's interesting about this plane, as I mentioned to you earlier, it's not corrugated. I personally, when I can find smooth-soled planes, I'll stick with them. Again, many times what will happen too is if you're shooting a chamfer, you can get stuck in the corrugations, and so it can make it difficult to use. The body of this plane is in very, very good condition. But just looking at the rest of this, the lever cap.
That looks pretty rough.
It is, and it appears to possibly be correct. It's been painted, which would have been not done. But what's really bad about this is this has been damaged, so you'll never get this to seat properly. And the way it was damaged is someone assumed that this was going to be a screwdriver that you could put down here and adjust this hold down screw.
Because that helps keep the tension on the lever cap to the iron.
Right, yeah.
So, because once these are set, typically you don't have to mess with them.
Exactly.
But this guy...
And you should be able to, and this one will move with your fingers. You really shouldn't need, unless it gets dirty, there should be never a need to really go in here and use a screwdriver on this. This is virtually useless at this point. This is just pot metal, and when they get broken like this, again, the problem is they don't hold the iron down as it should, and if it does have enough meat in the backside to hold the iron down, chips get underneath here and you clog the throat of your plane.
And it won't perform well.
Right. This is the iron's interesting. Number one, the iron itself, the chip breaker appears to be original to the plane. but the iron itself is too narrow.
Yeah, I was going to say it looks smaller.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, the iron was made by Miller's Falls, and it says that it's a 2 1/4 inch, which would be fitting for an old style 5 1/2 or a Miller's Falls plane.
The iron even looks bent, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, there's a bow and curve in this.
There certainly is. I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but there certainly is. Somebody really, I'm not really sure how that was meant to perform. It looks like what was happening is something must have been not engaging apparently. It looks like somebody bent it back.
Gotcha.
And that might
Right,
explain why the lateral adjuster was hitting on this iron as well. These are pretty easy to remove. This is just a little friction pin that holds this in place.
Okay.
And you could bend this back up and straighten it out.
Gotcha.
Once you have an appropriate iron here. And by the way, even from a collector's point of view, if you could find the parts, the appropriate parts, because the body is in such good condition, you know, that would be worth reviving and really restoring. The tote, the front screw, the hold down screw is missing, and it's in good shape except the horn is gone. A lot of people would ask, well, do you really need that horn? Well, believe me, the horn helps. Because it gives you forward thrust on the plane instead of having to bear down.
So, once again, a handle to replace this not only will help the value of it, but it's also going to help it perform.
Absolutely.
All right. So not too bad of a purchase there.
As long as you paid no more than $15 for it.
Gotcha. Now, ones if you get something like this. I mean, this has got plastic on it. I mean, obviously this is a newer hand plane. It's not old. Would it be worth having?
Most collectors and most hand plane users would look at this, and their usual reaction would be, "Boy, that's a handyman version." You know, it was a very inexpensive plane when it was made. It was made for incidental use. It wasn't made as a daily user. But you know, I look at that and I tell people, you know, there's absolutely nothing wrong with this plane. You know, it doesn't have a rosewood knob or tote. But on the other hand, this is not broken, which so many totes are broken. But just looking at this plane, you know, it's made like every other Bailey style plane. It has a lever cap, it has a chip breaker and an iron, and it also has a frog that has the ability to move forward and aft.
And so just real quick on that, I know in another video we're going to talk about tuning these up, but the ability to move that frog forward makes the difference between if you want to remove big shavings, to do a lot of removal, versus real fine, finished smoothing shavings.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And we want to talk about this at greater length in the future, I think. But a lot of people are under the impression, after reading a lot of things in magazines and online, that somehow the chip breaker itself controls the fineness of the shaving, and that's not true. It's the mouth opening itself which controls that. And we can get into that a little bit in the future. But so this is a perfectly good user plane. I'll guarantee in about 15 minutes we could have this plane being capable of taking off a half a thousandth.
Well, let's set that guy aside. We'll do that for another video.
Yeah.
So this is probably an ideal plane for someone who's just starting in woodworking, maybe doesn't have a lot of money, not sure if they want to do hand tools.
Yeah,
this is a great one to start with.
I would say so, yeah. I would,
and
absolutely.
I noticed you're moving the knob on that, so on any of these you want to make sure all the mechanical mechanisms are free and not stuck.
Yeah, and and we can use this. You can see that this is the depth control knob right here, and there's a little yoke, and this is common throughout all of this style plane. You want to make sure that that can be moved Sometimes they'll be frozen. All they need is a little bit of penetrating oil to open them up. But you want to make sure that that's capable of movement. It's very typical that these yolks will be broken, so you want to make sure that that's not broken. But yeah, you want the adjusters to be capable of adjustment.
So as you can tell, Dennis has a wealth of knowledge on the subject matter. And that was just a condensed version of the video. If you'd like to see the full-length video, you can click in the description box for a link to that. Now, I'm thinking about breaking the rest of that video up into smaller videos that's easier to watch for time's sake. And Dennis goes on to talk about transitional hand planes, which is half wood and half metal, as well as he talks about what to look for in buying just wooden planes. So if you would like to see shorter versions of that video, go ahead and leave some comments in the comment section below. I'm also thinking if you all are enjoying this series, I would like to go on and tell you where I buy my hand planes, what to look for, what to look out for. So again, if this is a topic that interests you, just go ahead and state your comments below. And of course, as always, if you have any questions regarding woodworking in your shop, feel free to write me at woodchoppingtime@gmail.com, because the whole purpose of my show is to make you a better woodworker. Until next time, thanks so much for watching, and keep on dancing.